Okay, so for the last 5 years, we've been doing this staffing and enrollment projections report.
Starting on page 4.
It's on page 4 of the packet. And I started this when I became the superintendent in my first year, just to give an idea to the board of what class sizes would look like and what our staffing costs would look like. And every year thereafter, I've given you an idea so that as we prepare to do the levy and when you and we head into the budget building season in February, March, April, you know, you have plenty of fair warning to give you an idea of how many students we're projecting will be enrolled next school year. Again, this is strictly a projection. It also gives you an idea of the staffing level we'll be at, so you have an idea of what type of cost you'll see an increase or decrease in the budget in. And it also gives you I gave 2 projections on staffing so that we can try to address some of the board goals and some of the feedback that you've heard from the teachers or some parents in the community in regards to class sizes and staffing ratios. So the first part of the report that you see up these are courses under 20 without board approval. And I know there were some questions submitted, but remember, when the board approves those classes, that's after registration. And so as you can see, during the registration time, we had at least 20 students register, which would mean they're not board approval. From that time, when the board approves those classes and students transfer, drop out of that class, take a different class, or there's a schedule conflict, sometimes this number falls below 20. So the purpose of just sharing this with you is just to give you an idea. There's only been 2 additional classes that have dropped below the original pre-approved 20. There was a question submitted, does the board need to pass a resolution? Our past practice for the last 4 years has been no. We have not passed a resolution because at the time of registration, these classes were both over 20. So really the board only approves classes that are under 20 after registration that we still want to run.
I couldn't remember.
Kristen, were there any other questions on that first top part? Number 2, status of courses under 20 with board approval. And so this is just an update. These are the courses that the board did approve during the registration period that were under 20, and it shows you where they're at with the current amount of students in them. And Kristen, did you have questions on this section?
Yes, this section was updated to reflect the questions. So there were initially 6 courses that were board approved because their enrollment or students registered were under 20. But 3 of the courses are now above 20, and so those are the 3 courses that you see on the right.
Thank you.
Great.
Classes over caps now.
Can I ask one question, though?
Sure.
The German, I think, was below at least the last year. And I don't remember, maybe AP Spanish Literature was, but is there a way to, I mean, you told us a lot of reasons they go up and down, but is there any way to encourage more students to sign up for these classes, or it's just nature of the beast, kind of?
Are you talking about like the AP Spanish Literature course?
Yeah, like AP Spanish Literature and Honors German 3 and AP German, because I'm certain that class was under before. I remember talking about it. I don't remember about the AP Spanish Literature.
In a language, it's common for courses to drop off a little bit with enrollment
Right.
at level 3 or higher.
Okay.
Because that's when it gets significantly more difficult. And a lot of the students in German, I shouldn't say a lot, some of them are also taking Spanish or French as
Oh,
well.
really?
And so that's usually the deciding factor. They pursue one language over the other, or they've decided that they've had enough of German and it's
Okay.
a little too difficult for them, or they don't want to pursue it. And then AP Spanish Literature specifically is typically the course that our native speakers take, because
Right.
that's the course after AP Spanish Language.
Okay.
So that's why that enrollment is a little lower than the
Okay.
other AP Spanish course.
Thank you.
The next portion of the report is classes over caps. And so the intention of this is just to show you how many of the current classes are over some of the internal caps that we've set. The goal is every year that I do this staffing projection is we try to take another year of core courses. So I believe it was either at the end of during my projections for my second year or my third year where we started to address class sizes, and we went after all freshmen math and English classes. In this past November, we went to address sophomore math and English classes. And so this year's projections will be addressing the junior classes of 16 and 17. Now, I have built in some flexibility for the building principal. When we work to address those class sizes, she's able to move around her FTE allotment and try to get more classes across the board, like junior and senior classes, closer to 27 or 28 instead of having them sit at 30 or 32 and the other one's being at 25. So that's why some of these caps look a little different, why one says 25 to 1 and the other one says 27. That was more of a building move, correct?
Correct.
Explain that again.
So the ideal, every year that I provide
Please.
projections to the board,
Right,
we try to address another year of math and English classes.
right,
And so last year, when I built in the projections, it was to make sure not only all freshmen and sophomore, or was to be for freshmen and sophomore math and English classes at 25 to 1. Now granted, it says plus or minus 2. So what that means is we should try to stay no higher than 27, and we should try to keep them no lower than 23. That's why that plus or minus 2 is there.
right.
And so last year, Kristen requested that instead of doing some of the sophomore honors classes, that they would address some of the junior regular level classes to begin to start working down some of those class sizes. And so that's why they made that the junior level classes 27. It's just a way for Kristen and her team to spread out FTE to try to address class sizes in some other areas. It does, and it's the building administration working with the instructional coaches to try to address some different areas. Kristen, is that a pretty fair explanation, or do you want to provide any color today?
No, I would just add that we also put the sophomore honors classes at that 27 to 1 ratio for math and English, with the goal that this coming year, all of those classes would be at the 25 to 1 ratio. We just put the 27 to 1 ratio in so that we didn't have to wait to start addressing our core junior classes. And this was also reorganized from the original report to have it organized by CAPS as opposed to department.
Okay.
And so, as you can see, you have, if I'm not, Chris, you want to make sure I got this count right, but I think there's 4 on page 5. And then we have a total of another 8. So we have 12 classes out of the couple hundred sections of classes that we offer that are over the internal caps we've set. So we've really done a good job if we're saying something's going to run at 27 to 1 or 29 to 1 or 20, that we've worked very hard with our counselors to not overfill those classes and to make sure we're trying to run a balanced master schedule. It's impossible. We still have some teachers that will ask the question, hey, I have 28 kids in my class, I thought the internal cap was 27. It's impossible to completely balance 1,609 students so that every single class is at or below the cap. But what we try, that's why we try to work within that plus or minus 2, so we don't have one cap sitting at 11 kids, or one class sitting at 11 kids and another class sitting at 33. So they've really done a good job with the guidance counselors and the building administration and instructional coaches to try to keep these sections as balanced as possible. Of course, the faculty would definitely like to see this number continue to go down, and I'm trying to build some of that into our projections, but I'm also doing it at a pace to where the board can sustain the improvements in the projections that we're trying to implement, so that we don't add back too many teachers and address class sizes across the board, and then in a year or two we're back to where we were in 11 and 12, where we're having to make reductions and let people go. So I'm trying to do it at a level that we can sustain it and maintain it for several years to come. The next part of the report is mandated courses for special populations. And Kristen, you want to speak to these? Yeah, I know you had a question or two on them.
There was just one question about the study skills program, and so that is 6 sections of 86 students across those 6 sections, so it is on average about 14 or 15 students in each course.
So is that true? I couldn't make it out on this one. So I just picked one on life skills on 10. Is that 5 sections with 1 and 1 section with 2 then?
So
how you
no,
do
so
the
life
math?
skills is different.
Okay.
Those 7 students, that's why this part is a little tricky.
I
So
couldn't
life
figure the
sk-
schedule out.
So life skills is a little different. A majority of those students are in the life skills program throughout the day. They're focusing on daily living skills. Some students do leave that classroom and that experience to go into some core classes.
Okay.
But it's offered 6 periods a day for that one. Pre-vocational job placement and experience, those are students that are working on job skill sets and then also get placed outside of RB to do some actual experience working in jobs. So it looks like it's offered 7 periods a day, but it's, some students are there for multiple periods.
I got you.
And then the transition program is for students that are 18 to 22, and that's all focused on job placement.
Okay.
And then the emotional disabilities program is offered 5 periods a day, and most of those students are only assigned 1 period. Some students are assigned 2 periods.
Got it. Thank you.
Kristen, is number 15 the only class that has students over age 18? Between 18 and 22?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so then the next page, this is the staffing chart that Kristen maintains throughout the year for our building administration and for the district administration, just to give us an idea of where we are by departments. It gives you the FTE for 2014-15, our current FTE for 15-16, and the change that occurred. And then it also provides you a weighted class average for the courses that were given an internal cap of a 30-to-1, a 25-to-1, or a 40-to-1. Kristen, where would a class that you gave a 27-to-1 cap be sitting?
Since it was for 1 year, we left it at the 30-to-1 since the +2 was 29.
Okay. So
What
this
about
gives you an
30?
idea of where our weighted average class size is in those classes. And then our overall class average is about 28.
You mind if I go back to one other question? And most of the classes are 1 or 2 students over what we ranged. It doesn't seem outrageous, but the string orchestra and honors chamber orchestra were over by the actual number by 11. It's almost 25%. The other alternative would be we would have to turn students down, right? Because there's not enough students to do 2 sections of it.
Well, so those are 2 courses combined. That's a regular course and an honors course combined, and they're both at the 40-to-1 ratio. And I believe one had 36 or so students, and the other had, I
If they're
believe,
different.
15 students.
Okay.
So instead of collapsing and not running the 15, we combined them.
Got it.
So
Okay.
that everybody would still be able to take orchestra.
Got it.
So there's ways, multiple ways you could address. You could open 2 sections and try to split that up even more. But it just didn't, with
Okay.
our staffing allotment, trying to stay in what we projected and with budget. The next page, this is the chart that Mary Ann sends out annually to all of our local feeder schools, and they fill in. We also make sure that we are accounting for any students that are outplaced. Sometimes districts will only give us students that are in their buildings and not some special needs students that maybe are outplaced that eventually will be coming over to RB as well. So we made sure that that's all accounted for this year. So this gives you an idea of where their enrollments are at each building or each district. And then Tim takes into account transfers and historical data and gives you an idea in the bottom left-hand corner of what we think our enrollment will be for next school year. Our enrollment for next school year is we're projecting 1633. Is that correct, Tim, or is that our current enrollment?
That's our current.
That says actual,
Current.
yeah.
And so the next page over shows you that his projection is 1632. And so this accounts for both students that will be attending. This accounts for about 50 to 60% inclusion of transfers as well as outplaced students. And so 1632, then we see a spike again in 18 where we go to 1671, then it holds consistent, then it goes up again in 20, and it kind of holds consistent in 21. In the bottom of this page, you'll see last year's projection He projected around 1605. Actual turned out to be 1633, but 1609 of that is actually taking classes at RB that we need to account for with teachers. The other 24 students are receiving either credit recovery services to just finish their diploma, or are outplaced students with special with IEPs. So that will bring you to the color-coded chart, and I'm going to walk you through this.
One comment I made is, I think the first 3 years I was here, we never differentiated. I didn't understand there were two different sets of numbers. I think it's important that we address that there's two different sets of enrollment numbers. Because one we use for determining what our staffing is going to be. The other one has an effect on
Overall budget.
on our overall budget, because who we're placing in different.
Sure.
I think both sets of numbers are kind of important, so we're aware of that.
So again, the board sees 1630. If you look at the next page, I'll walk you through this step by step. The only thing I added from the original that was sent out is the little box in the top right corner that shows you a 1.0 FTE, teaches 5 classes. I call them required FTE, and that's just by choice, but these required FTE are more or less your support services, your interventions, your contractual, so counselors, social workers, special ed teachers, instructional coaches, librarians, English language learners, credit recovery, literacy coaches, instructional tech. These are other FTEs that would be paid on the contract rate that count for our staffing totals, but aren't necessarily in a classroom. Some are in a classroom, like the special ed, but librarians still are on the teacher's contract, but are not necessarily seeing 150 students or having lab classes at 25-1, different things like that. So the top box, the top color coded to the left where it says 2015-16, our current FTE is 97.3. The yellow boxes are just showing you a breakdown of the number of required FTE, is how I label them, for this projection estimate, which is roughly around 22.2. If you go to the top Excel box or table to your right, our current enrollment, you'll see that box has no shading in it, is 1633. I roughly take out 1.25%, which is our population that's either outplaced or credit recovery or in homeschool, so that roughly gives us the 1609 that we have currently taking classes here at RB. Of that, 60% take 7 classes, right around 40% take 6, and then the remaining percentage take 5. So that's the number of students and the number of seats, because a person that takes 5 classes, so it's the 5 times the 90 for 450. Then I did an average class. Our overall class weighted average is 28, and then it breaks down by those students how many FTE. And so then you take that, and then what the total to the right to get the 97.3 shows you the 3.2 to 27.5, the 43.9, plus those required FTE. We technically, if we wanted to staff exactly to the number, we should be around 96.8 teachers, and we have 97.3, so we're above by about a 0.5 FTE. And sometimes that's just related to flexibility and
You meant
conflicts in the
staff,
schedule.
right, not teachers, right?
That's FTE,
Right.
all in and certified teachers.
So if you take the 97.3 and minus 22.2, you get 75.6 that are teacher FTEs, which would be adding the FTE column that's in green, right?
Correct.
Okay.
So next year, if I kept the overall class average the same, with 1632, you take out the roughly the 1.25. I rounded it to roughly 1612 for some projections we think might be coming in. You'll see we should be roughly at 98.7, or a 1.4 increase in FTE. But I wanted to begin to address again another year of courses, or a class year of courses. So the recommendation that I'd be presenting to the board, or want the board to be prepared for, is it's closer to 2.8 or 3.0 for flexibility, knocking the weighted average number of seats down to 27.5. That should give Kristen some flexibility to start addressing math and English courses at the junior level, and the remaining honors courses at the sophomore level. So roughly for next year, we should be increasing by about 2.8 to 3.0 FTEs. And again, this is strictly a projection. If we get more transfers in than expected, that number could go up. If we have more conflicts because we have kids signed up for more AP classes or singleton classes, courses that are only offered one time during the day, that could create some conflicts. But the board should be prepared for at least an increase of 3 FTEs.
Is that our increase this year?
Our increase this year went from, if you go back 2 or 3 pages ago, we went from 94.4 to 97.3, so 2.9.
2.9, just under 3.
Correct. So over the last 3 years, we've added about
Okay.
9 to 10 teachers. So we've been consistently adding back the teachers that we had to reduce in 11 and in 12 to address the budget and the deficit issues. So this is a projection in November. Things can change. We're beginning course registrations. But the idea of this is to kind of lay out for you, so when we go through the budget process and the staffing process, that hopefully our projections and our staffing projections come in similar to what we foresee for the 16-17 school year. And I just wanted to give you the science behind how we're kind of making these.
I don't understand how you figured out the required FT. I mean, there's nothing in here that leads to an understanding of how you came up with the increase from 22.2 to 23.1.
Sure. So let me explain that. The instructional tech last year was at 0.6, so now we're adding another year of Chromebooks. So we're going to have freshmen and sophomores, so I increased that by a 0.2. So that was 1.2, and then our current special ed staffing is 11.2, and we have our caseloads, but based on the number of students we have enrolled in special ed and the number of special ed staff. Each special ed teacher has what they call a caseload, and that's outside of their classroom. They manage IEP meetings and different intervention meetings for each of those students, and we're at kind of max capacity for that. So just based on our special ed population, we're probably going to have to hire, take that 11.2 and round that to 12, so that we can have manageable caseloads for all of our special ed population. Okay. So again, just a projection. But that's why I've counted that in there. And we've seen a pretty steady increase in that area. So we've added almost a teacher, at least a half part-time 0.5 FTE or 1.0 FTE the last few years, as our students with IEPs continue to grow. So again, just a projection. If our special ed staffing came in slightly less, those are sections then we could apply to our goal of trying to lower class sizes on the other side of the chart.
And in the current year, the 0.5 was the difference what we projected when we thought there'd be 1609 students, and what we ended up when there was 1633, right? I mean, because this is the current year, so is that what the 0.5? Because you have total FTE of 96.8.
That's what, if we went exactly to the student, we should be staffed at around.
Oh, okay.
And we're at currently 97.3, so it shows you there's roughly about a half a FTE built in there for some conflicts.
Okay.
And to address other issues.
Okay.
So that's why when you look at that last one on the bottom, even though the projection says to address class sizes we should be at 100.1, which would be a 2.8,
right.
I'm telling the board it should be at least, plan on seeing at least 3, because just to make things easier to address with staffing and balancing classes.
And of the 3 compared to this year, is the 0.5 teachers or is it the other staff?
It's all together.
It's
I
both.
couldn't break that for you that in for you right now.
But at least if you look at the projection for next year, there's a 0.9 increase in the required FTEs. So
you know what, Tim? If you go back to page, to answer your question, 7.
Yeah.
That Mary Ann, if you can go back to page, that chart.
Yeah.
You can see where the increase went for this year.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I read that. I'm sorry.
So 1.0 went in special ed, 0.1 was in ELL, 0.2 was instructional tech.
Okay.
So really, the 2.9 increase, 1.3 of that was on the required FTE side.
Okay,
And then the other big increases occurred in the social
Math.
science,
okay.
mathematics. You see 1.8 between social science and mathematics.
Okay.
Could you stay on that sheet, and this is something informational for me. You have overall class sizes at 28, but included in there is band, included in there is PE. Can we get a breakout on the STEM areas, on what those average class sizes, English, math? I mean, is that, I know this, I know what this is for, this is for
English is
projection.
in STEM.
A better way would say is core classes.
Yeah,
Math,
core
science,
classes,
English,
what- yes, yeah.
required core classes. I
And
can-
what those averages are?
Yeah, go ahead, Kristen.
It's broken down on the chart, so it goes across. So for applied arts, you can see that's the first line under the 30-to-1. So you can see for that class average, at that ratio, it's 29.07.
Yeah, but then what's
Yeah, but
the
there's
next
two
column over?
numbers.
So-
And then it goes all the way across.
Right, but what is the overall for,
So you're saying because English is either 27.6 or 24.3?
yeah, I don't know how many are at the
what's-
25 now versus the 30, right? Because we're trying to move them towards the 25, right? So I don't have the, you know.
So you'd want a number of sections in that area? Or you just want to see what, if
I mean, I don't.
for the overall
I know
class
this
average?
is for your projection use initially, but I mean, part of the, you know, people see the 28 number, but if English and math and the core subjects have overall concentration somewhere closer to 24 or 25, I don't know where it's at.
Gotcha. So
Yeah.
it could be skewing the number by having those 40 and the 34.
Right, because you got PE in there, you got band in there, you got.
Or if you look at science, his question's answered. There's not a number for 30-to-1, so the average class size
Yeah,
for science is
you can see it's
24.32.
right.
So he'd want to see that for the social science,
And
English,
I
and
know, and
math.
we're moving towards that 25-to-1, right?
Correct.
But in the last column, those numbers are only consistent with the rows for fine arts wellness, which is our gym
Gym.
classes.
But I think
And-
he's saying for that overall class average, it's got the 27.9 to 24.6 and the 39.8
Right.
built into the 28. If you took out those ones that have 40 and 34, our overall class average might be down closer to
Because-
20. Closer
And
to
then
Doesn't
what should I be,
plus-
and what I should expect to see, if you're telling us we're putting more teachers in those areas, over the years, I should start seeing that core area coming down in class sizes. Maybe the overall stays the same because we are increasing the number of gym classes at 45 or whatever the number is. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Or it's not gonna go down as much because you still have the band
Elective
at
areas.
50,
Right.
you still have the Ps
Well,
at
the
50.
the questions that we're beginning to take from staff are, at what point will eventually this plan go into where we're going to start addressing fine arts classes or elective classes? And I've told them our current push will be over the next 2 years for math, science, the core required classes, and then seeing where we're at, then we would start going back through and looking at electives and world languages and some of those classes.
Well, world language is 26.29. It's almost 2 students a class lower than the overall class average. 'Cause
Correct.
there's only the one column there.
In what one won't see in that is like that German class that has 11 students, that's helping really drive down
Right.
that number.
Right.
The rest of the courses may be closer to 31. So it's a numbers game, and
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it-
it is.
it's strictly a breakdown, but I understand the overall class average, we should maybe have that without, because they are significantly higher than the other targets we're trying to hold.
Sure.
All right, thank you.
Are there any other questions on the projections?
I just have one other one that I asked. On the next page from the one you were looking at, which is page 8, what's the difference between the total and the bigger chart and the total that's in a box? They both indicate they're September 30th of 2015 and they're different numbers.
The lower line is actually, should be September 2014. That's last year.
Oh, okay.
That's a
All
mistake.
right. No, it's okay.
No wonder you were puzzled.
I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what did he do? What do we do different here? Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Everybody good?
Okay.
Again, same process we've been using for the last 5 years. I know sometimes the same questions resurface, but it's just more or less to make sure all the details are laid out for us as we go into levy and budget process over the next 6 months.
Any other questions, or we should move on? Nothing to approve here, right?
Nothing to approve.
Okay.